Back to the show now for more on the interviews for the two vacancies in the Constitutional Court. We speak now to Zikhona Ndlebe, who is a Research and Advocacy Officer at Judges Matter. It's a transparency project that believes in the importance of judges. Thank you so much for joining us, Zikhona. The Black Lawyers Association has come out in support of Western Cape Judge President Judge Hlophe in terms of the other vacancy, the other big vacancy, which is for the Chief Justice. Your reaction as Judges Matter?
Morning. Yes, the BLA has come out in support of Judge President Hlophe as the next Chief Justice, but that is not a surprise to us because at the end of the day, he is a judge and he is on the bench, and the call for nominations by the President was for all legal practitioners, people that do have legal qualifications, that have experience, and he does have all of that. But what is now outstanding is for the panel that has been nominated by the President to sit down, which we believe it has already done so, sit down and decide what rules it's going to put in place to ensure that the correct person that has been nominated will be shortlisted and ultimately interviewed by the JSC and ultimately appointed as the next Chief Justice. Perhaps one of the measures that they can put in place is to state that the person must have a legal qualification, must have a good track record, there must not be any complaints against that person. But we are not surprised that Judge President Hlophe has been nominated as a candidate for the next Chief Justice, as a candidate.
I hear what you say, that he is a practicing judge, and as such he should be considered. But the process that's underway right now with the with the JSC, where he's been found guilty of conduct that seriously threatened and interfered with the apex court's independence, its impartiality, its dignity, and so on and so forth. Should this be considered at all?
Definitely, it should be considered. As I've said, it's up to the panel what criteria they're going to look at. If they want to, they can say that a person who is nominated and who should be shortlisted, there should not be any complaints pending against that person. So perhaps Judge President Hlophe might be shortlisted or might not be, but that's all up to the shortlisting panel. But definitely, the fact that there is a pending complaint and the fact that the JSC made a decision that he is guilty of gross misconduct should be considered when it comes to whether he should be shortlisted or not.
Let's now take the conversation we invited you for. In fact, we're showing live footage right now of the interviews taking place, interviews and nominees for the Constitutional Court candidates. About this process, what do you make of the potential candidates that will be interviewed as of today?
Well, currently the interviews that are underway are for the Constitutional Court vacancies. It's two vacancies. If you remember, the interviews took place in April of this year, and those interviews were challenged by CASAC because CASAC was of the view that the JSC did not ask correct questions. It asked irrelevant questions, and its line of questioning was not proper, and there was a settlement agreement that was made, and which was ultimately made an order of court that the JSC would rerun the interviews. So what we're seeing now is the rerun of the Constitutional Court interviews. So the same candidates that were in the April interviews are going to be interviewed today, except Judge BLA, who has not availed herself to be interviewed.
Yeah. Let's just talk about the criteria that the Judicial Service Commission uses for appointing these judges. What are your comments on this, on the criteria?
Well, the issue that was raised by CASAC is that the line of questioning of the JSC was not correct, and the JSC is now rerunning interviews that took place in April, but there has not been a set criteria by the JSC as to what type of questions the commission is allowed to ask. As far as we are aware, the JSC asks questions based on the Constitution, Section 174, whether a candidate is a fit and proper person, is appropriately qualified, and they also look at transformation in terms of race and gender. But as far as other questions, there is no set criteria by the JSC. And the concern is, what if the same challenge is undertaken in respect of these interviews, perhaps by CASAC or by a different organization that the JSC has asked inappropriate questions. But again, it will depend on how the JSC conducts these interviews. And obviously, how the JSC conducts the Constitutional Court interviews will also affect how the rest of the interviews are conducted.
And what do you make of the process which the President has chosen to follow before appointing the next Chief Justice, where he invited the public to have a say?
Well, that's we as judges matter believe that's the correct process to follow. The President usually has the sole prerogative when it comes to appointing the Chief Justice in terms of Section 1743. The President can decide that he wants to have a certain person interviewed by the JSC and ultimately appointed as the Chief Justice. But now he's chosen an open process, which we believe is the correct process because it has allowed there to be transparency. It has allowed the public to engage as to who becomes the next Chief Justice, and that is what we want. We want transparency. It cannot be solely dependent on the President who becomes the next Chief Justice. Obviously, the President has the last say, but we think that this is a good process. Some people have objections to the process, but we as judges matter think that there should be transparency and openness when it comes to the appointment of the next Chief Justice. It is the highest judge in South Africa. He's responsible for the judiciary and he chairs the JSC. He is responsible for conduct proceedings as well. So it's a very important thing that there should be transparency.
Zikhona, some organizations have expressed reservations about some members of the panel appointed by the President to oversee the selection of possible candidates. Your views on this panel, which you spoke about at the beginning of the conversation?
So the Pillay panel, it is comprised of very experienced people. We've got Nadi Pillay, who is the chair of that panel, and we've got people like the former public protector Tulima Donzara. They've got a lot of experience. So although people have reservations about the panel, but we do not believe that there should be any concern because the panel has set already and set out how it's going to conduct the selection of those people that have been nominated to be shortlisted and interviewed by the JSC. We don't think that there should be any concerns. However, if there are people who have concerns, they have the right to raise those concerns. But then again, when it comes to the candidates that have been nominated, there's still time for people to raise their own objections when it comes to the candidates that have been shortlisted. And those objections will be considered by the panel.
Zikhona, thank you so much for your thoughts this morning, and we watch and follow the work of your organization. We think it's very important work.
Thank you so much.
Zikhona Ndlebe is the Research and Advocacy Officer at Judges Matter. Let's now take you live to the JSC interviews. We're going to be dipping in and out of the process. Let's take you there live for now.
For refusing to patrol in the townships. However, my question is to you. Is this something you want to keep? Why have you not applied for a nullification of this criminal record? That's the first question. And the second question I have is...
Maybe let him answer that first one.
Okay.
Mr. Dorson.
I don't see it as it's something I don't want to hide away. It's something I'm proud of, frankly, that I acted in accordance with my conscience. It hasn't interfered with my professional life in any way. So from that point of view, I haven't felt a need to seek a nullification. I don't even know if there's a procedure to seek a nullification. But I'm proud of what I did.
Thank you very much, Advocate. The second one is having, but of course I think you responded to that from the issues which were raised by the DCJ earlier on, that your focus has been on land restitution. And therefore, how would you describe your abilities to decide on matters which will arise, which relate to litigation issues at the Constitutional Court?
As I understand your question, I come from a specialized background. How do I deal with other matters? To respond to that, let me start by saying I'm similarly proud of the fact that virtually my entire professional career has been aimed at dealing with the problem that black people were forced off their land in South Africa, and I make no apologies for the fact that that's been the focus of my professional life. But I have been widely involved beyond that. In the Land Claims Court, we inevitably, and the Acting Chief Justice I think will bear me out with this given his experience in the Labour Court and the Labour Appeal Court, specialists of course sit within the matrix of the broader legal system. Every single case just about brings out other issues from other components of the legal system. I in fact made a list which I can make available if need be. I don't want to waste time by going through it, but of both non-constitutional, non-land reform issues that came up in my reported judgments, and there are several. I took a sample, and then I also took a sample from my time as an acting judge, because I've acted in the Labour Court, I've acted in the High Court, I've gone back and acted again in the Land Claims Court. But you will see from my curriculum vitae that through my acting in the High Court, I've dealt with a range of issues that have absolutely nothing to do with land reform, and that venture into a whole lot of other areas, both of constitutional law and of non-constitutional law. And I have several reported judgments referred to at the end of my curriculum vitae in the High Court that have nothing to do with land reform. I'm not sure if that answers. I also have a list separately that I can provide of all of the non-land reform constitutional issues that I've had to deal with, both in the Land Claims Court as well as in the High Court in acting. And then as an advocate, I focus on constitutional law, but I've been involved in a wide range of issues, environmental, I've done a lot of customary law work, and so on.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Oh, Nyami, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Acting DCJ. Morning. What motivated you to accept the nomination as a candidate to be position of a judge in the Constitutional Court?
I have gone through a very unusual route in my career. Normally people go attorney, advocate, judge, and that's it. I've gone an unusual route. I know of no other lawyer who's gone that route, and it's taken me in diverse places. I went from attorney, human rights attorney, to being a land claims court judge, to working in the UN, to being a practicing advocate. And my sense is, firstly, Section 174(5) of the Constitution makes it clear that only 4 of the judges need to be judges at the time that they're appointed. So there's a door that is open to me in the Constitution, people in my position, if there were anyone. And I felt that the experience that I'd had could be of assistance in enriching the adjudication of the Constitutional Court. Both my non-land work, as well as particularly my land work. I think it's going to be a big issue in the years to come.
Thanks. My second question, as a senior counsel, attorney, acting judge, a judge, we have seen it all. What's your view about the current state of the transformation of the judiciary?
My sense as a lawyer, I'm proud of what's been achieved in the transformation of the judiciary in particular. I'm exposed to it because I'm married to a judge in the High Court, and I appear in the High Courts. And my sense is that if I think back on the days of the 1980s, when I was knocking at the doors of the High Court to try and get somebody out of detention, when I was knocking at the doors of the Supreme Court of Appeal after I'd failed in the High Court, and I was faced in the Supreme Court of Appeal with a phalanx of white male judges shaking their heads when we tried to submit that detainees should have been released, or the damages should be paid because of what the police did brutally to somebody. And I see a phalanx of white male men. It was a very depressing experience. If I contrast that experience